And welcome everybody. It is PnP Weekly episode 146. It is 6th of December. It is Independence Day in Finland, so it is a public holiday. Nobody's working.
Which is why you're at work.
Exactly. So we record on Mondays and we deliver on Tuesday. That's how it works. Anyway, so it is Independence Day in Finland, which is actually pretty good. If you recall, Finland is now 104-year-old, so something like that. No idea. Something like that. 1997.
104-year-old or 104
Yes.
years independent?
Independent. Yes, that is the right way of saying that. You are absolutely correct.
Older than that.
Now, my name is Vesa Juvonen. I work as a program manager in the Microsoft 365 platform areas on the ecosystem and open source. And with me as a co-host is Waldek. Who are you?
Hi, everybody. My name is Waldek Mastykarz, and I am cloud developer advocate for Microsoft 365 and Microsoft.
Excellent. And in the PnP Weekly, typically we have a visitor, and quite often we have a visitor, and then we cover the latest what has happened within the blog post and in the community articles. Now, this time we were joined by Derek Cash-Peterson. I needed to double check that I didn't get the full name properly, but
names.
Exactly. Derek works as a consultant, or what was the right title, and an architect in the Sympraxis Consulting, and is based on Reykjavik. So we had a good discussion related on how did he ended up moving from Postman to Reykjavik and about his past, and some good tips also for people who are looking into building their consulting career in Microsoft 365. But let's actually jump on that interview right away, and we'll come back on the articles right after that. So, welcome, Derek, joining us on the PnP Weekly episode 146. You are calling from, well, apparently it's not as cold at Reykjavik as we thought that it would be.
You're not calling. We're not calling.
Well, what is calling?
Are
Fine.
calling?
Fine. Is this calling? Thank you, Waldek. Derek, can you do a quick intro as who you are?
Sure. I'm Derek Cash-Peterson. I work at Sympraxis Consulting. And right now, I am based out of Reykjavik, Iceland.
And
you are an MVP.
And you're an MVP.
You're an MVP. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a brand new MVP. I'm not used to saying it yet, so it just it doesn't roll off the tongue. So,
It's been a week, right?
It's been about a week.
Yeah.
I just got to put the slug on my first slide deck. So
that is probably makes you feel like, yes, accomplished. So
I made it.
And now I don't need to do anything anymore, right?
If only.
That's when the work just starts.
Yeah. Yes. But you are, I think it was this month, it's you and then Marcus from Germany, who are the new Office developer MVPs. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a while.
Have you been an MVP? If it's been a while?
No, I was doing this work. I mean, I've been doing SharePoint work since 2006.
Wow.
So, and I never really wanted to be an MVP. And then I started being a manager, and then I was like, I'm never going to be an MVP as a manager. And everybody on my team was going towards being an MVP, but I was a manager. And then when I started working in Sympraxis, I was like, okay, this can be a thing now. I can do this. So
it's actually start from there. So can you talk about what are you doing in Sympraxis? So what do you do for the work time? What do you do?
Sure.
Talking is hard,
What do you do for a living?
Right now, I'm doing some development work, some ACE. Right now I'm building ACEs, the adaptive card extensions, which I'm really having some fun with. I helped for a while. I was doing the team samples that we worked on with you, which was a great learning experience because it really helped me sort of figure out how to build across the entire stack of SharePoint and Teams and ACEs and how to pull that all together. I also do a fair amount of project management and just technical project management and coordination. So I think that's one of those things, like having been a manager and architecting projects and managing teams of people, is sort of one of my sweet spots where I can sort of come in and sort of oversee a group of folks doing work. So
yeah. And it's, as a Sympraxis is a relatively small company. So it's like, is it 10? Is it already 8?
Not even. There's 6 of us total.
6. Okay. And it's more about basically then consulting-based approach, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all the work we do is consulting, sort of project-based consulting work. We don't sort of, go sit on site for years and years and years, although we do have a few clients that, some of us have worked with for a long time, but generally it's project-based.
Yeah. Now, and then let's actually talk about the other thing, which is interesting. You which said that you're apparently calling is not the right term. Thank you, Waldek, on that. But so you're calling from Reykjavik.
Yes.
How did that happen? Can you talk about that a bit?
Okay, so it's sort of it's an interesting story. So in 2018, my husband and I, my mother took our son, for a week every summer. And in 2018, my husband and I were like, we don't have a kid for a week. Let's go do something crazy. And so we decided, just on like 3 days notice, we're like, let's go to Iceland. We've always wanted to go. And so we did. And we came here for a long weekend. And, we flew in like on a Thursday or Friday and then flew out on a Sunday night. And we had such an amazing time. And it was summer, but it was just
with a bit of a difference.
There's the trick. There's the trick,
it's a
right?
bait and switch.
Yeah.
We had such an amazing time, and it's one of those things where, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but there are very few places in my life that I've lived where it felt like home. Like I just felt grounded and like just this sense of space and so forth. So on the plane ride home, we were talking about this and we were like, this was so amazing. We should bring our son. And then, we thought about it and it was like, oh, well, we don't have enough vacation time, or we don't have enough money. We don't have X, Y, and Z. And I was working for another company at the time. And we both sort of like, we sat on that for a couple of days and then sort of realized that these were all constructs, right? We could change jobs, we can change our lives. And so that's what we did. We spent the next 6 months. I started working for Sympraxis. My husband left his job and started consulting himself. And so we both worked 100% remote, and we decided that the next summer we were going to spend 10 weeks here.
Yep.
So we spent we rented an apartment. We showed up. Our son got out of school on like a Friday. That night we were on the plane on our way here. And we met so many wonderful and amazing people. And so we spent our 10 weeks, and it was just a really sort of transformative experience for us. And we worked remotely anyway, so it didn't really matter. And so our COVID project, so we were originally going to plan on moving, like going somewhere different every summer. So we were supposed to we came to Iceland for 10 weeks. We were going to go to Portugal in the summer of 2021. But even then we were spending a week in Reykjavik on either side of the trip. So anyway, we decided that we just wanted to move here. Like, we loved it so much that we're just like, forget it. We're just going to go.
And all the light in summertime, right? So
yes, yeah,
the days will just go on and on and on.
Like, it was like 24 hours a day. It was live. It was like,
yeah,
this is brilliant until it isn't.
Watching Netflix at 2 a.m. and you're like, oh, it's 2. We should probably go to bed. But yeah, so that was our COVID project. Some people made sourdough, and we figured out how to get a work visa and move here, because it's not that simple for non-EU folks or non-Nordic folks. So
okay,
yeah. So anyway, so that's what we got here in July, 4th of July, as a matter of fact.
Cool.
Which is Independence Day.
So you've been around for 5 months now, I guess, permanently, yeah.
Yeah, 5 months we've been here, and it's great. I mean, there's a lot of things that are that takes a little while to get used to. The darkness is one of them, obviously. Not having, because it's an island, not having quite as many options or creature comforts that we would have, outside of Boston, So there's no Amazon here. There's no, anything you want to, any electronics. There's like 2 electronic stores.
Well, why would you want, like, you have a flashlight and generator. Like, these are probably the most essential things you will ever need
I don't think you need those in Reykjavik. Come on.
I don't think you need those. The sunlight, the city's too bright.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, but in case there's an emergency, or you want to go to a cabin, or you want to explore the nature, I don't know.
Yes. We don't have a car, so there's not a whole lot of nature exploring right now.
Huh.
Yeah, we have to borrow a friend's car.
And renting a car is really, really expensive. Wasn't that the case, if I remember?
It was. I haven't checked recently, but yeah, during COVID, all the car companies sold their cars. So now, to stay afloat. So now that the tourists are coming back, the number of cars that are available is super low, so they can jack the prices up. So it was something like $700 US for us to rent a car for 2 days. And it was
what? You could probably buy a car for that.
Cars here,
I don't know how old it will be, but you should be able to buy it. Probably like we see it here. Like, you can buy a car for $1,500, but then probably the insurance and maintenance costs more than for itself.
I haven't even looked into that yet. Honestly, I live in the city. I live within walking distance of just about everywhere I need to go. So.
Yeah,
Reykjavik. There is no need for you to go anywhere, right? Because you work remotely, so you don't need to be anywhere.
True.
Yes,
true.
Yeah, in my bedroom.
You have a work-home distance of 2 meters.
I don't. Unfortunately, our space. One of the trade-offs we had to make was in the U.S. we had a big enough house that I had a designated workspace. My husband had a designated workspace, and they were at opposite ends of the house. In coming to Reykjavik, we did have to downsize a lot, and so
we have a desk on the opposite sides of it.
Not quite. My office is in the bedroom, and his office is in the living room. So yeah. Right. And the only reason we were in the same room, except that they've been doing construction on my front yard, on the walkway in front of my house since July. So I couldn't deal with the jackhammers and the what do you call the front end loaders, the big cranes dumping dirt in our So
yeah, the house prices are pretty high in the Nordic area because of the weather conditions and all of that stuff. So it's in general it's pretty expensive comparing to the prices in the US. So
yeah, I mean, it's for living in the city, it's less expensive than a comparable sized house in the city of Boston, but it's still expensive. So
yeah, makes sense. Now, that's the current situation. Let's go back in time. You actually, before we started recording, you said that we almost got you with the coffee. So,
like, I said, what?
Yes. What? So, but you said that you started with SharePoint back in 2006. So, can you talk about your career development? How did you end up choosing a SharePoint?
All right. Let's see. So I had actually, before I even started web development, I was a sex educator. So I did public health. I would go to schools. I would talk to kids in schools and stuff like that. And part of that work was at 1999, 2000. And one of the things that I started doing was I taught myself web development, front-end web development. And so I was using, back in those days, chat rooms and stuff like that to help educate folks. So I saw the sort of need and the ability to bring technology into public health work. And so I just taught myself. And then I decided that I really needed to make more money than I was making in the public sector. And so I started doing agency work, as a consultant. And we did all public facing websites. So I actually got started building public facing websites using Microsoft Content Management Server.
Yeah.
Before that, it
Gotcha.
was called Encompass Resolution.
Yep.
Yes.
And there's like 5 people in the world that worked with that tool. But so I worked with Encompass Resolution, and then I sort of moved into MCMS 2001, 2002. And then when they discontinued MCMS and brought all that stuff into SharePoint 2007, that's when I jumped in and started doing SharePoint work. And I stayed doing more or less public facing work into 2010 and SharePoint 2010. And then I moved jobs several times, but after doing that, I just sort of started doing more intranets and more of that type of work. And then I just sort of ended up, this is sort of where I ended up. Like, I'm good at it. And
it's fun. So, you can deliver, you get paid.
It is,
so.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and it's constantly reinventing itself. And that's the thing that I really appreciate about sort of where I've been in the last few years, is that it was all server side. I mean, I started as a front-end dev doing HTML and CSS and sort of pulling all that into public-facing work. And now, I'm sort of going back in that direction again after having spent so many years doing server-side code.
Yeah.
So
related on that one, you also said that you've done adaptive card development and SPFX and all of that stuff. Well, how do you see the transition from the server side where we are right now? Is it a limiting factor? Is it interesting? It's any thoughts on that?
DLLs. Where are my DLLs?
Where are my DLLs?
Yes.
I had to ask Julia the other day. I needed to decompile something, and I remember back in the old days we could use a tool and decompile a DLL.
Oh, yeah.
I have to say I feel like client-side dev is a little more freeing than it is. I can't get behind CSS in JavaScript, but I do think it's a little more freeing, right? Like, I remember having to carry around the huge laptops with the giant batteries and the giant hard drives and all the RAM, and it was so much work to set up a new environment. I really, really enjoy the sort of freedom of just sort of, installing Node and being good to go, and, installing a few packages and really just being able to do it. I also really enjoy the fact that because we're building in SharePoint on the server side, if you could do it and do it well, you were like a unicorn, right? And that was great for my career. But when I start looking at the community, being able to democratize development like that and really put it in standard tools that folks know how to use. So if you know how to use React, you know how to use TypeScript, you can do SharePoint work. You can do Office development work. And so I really appreciate that, because it doesn't feel like in 2007, 2010, it felt like a closed club. And that if you knew how to do it, you were in the club. And if you didn't, the learning curve was too high.
Then you didn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And so, when I was working on a team and building a team, I would, if they didn't have server-side code specifically in SharePoint, they could be a back-end developer or a full-stack developer, but if they didn't know SharePoint, they weren't getting the job because it was too hard to teach.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate it. And it's, and it's moving, so it keeps me interested. And
How do you see the development with the Viva Connections and Viva Cards, and are you seeing a demand for that? We did work with you on building some of the samples, but are there actually customer demand for that side of the house?
We're just starting to see folks that are coming in and saying, I want Viva. And they're not quite getting the nuances that it's actually for different things or multiple different products. They're like, I want Viva.
Don't say. Don't okay.
Yeah, we can deliver.
So not necessarily a whole lot of demand yet, But one of the things that it's really important to be able to do, and this is like what I try to do, is understand how to tell the whole story and how all the pieces work together. And so it's not just about bringing your intranet into Teams, right? It's not just building a Teams app. It's how can we build the right tool for your business and get it in the hands of the users to make the user experience better. And whether that's a custom adaptive card extension, or whether that's one of the out-of-the-box ones, or whether it's a Teams app, it really doesn't matter. It's like, here are the different tools that we have in the toolbox, and let's pick the right one to build, to solve the right problem. So,
and if you look like what are the different things you build, where do you see majority of the work being done? Is it in extending Teams? Is it in extending SharePoint, extending Viva, Power Platform, all of it, none of it?
So a lot of it tends to be business process oriented. So I need a solution, a workflow solution, right? I'm working we had a client, they're using Teams. We help them set up Teams, and they have 150 sort of satellites. And all of those users need to pass data into the headquarters, for instance. And so, I end up, like I said, using the best tool for the job. And so, I had to do some provisioning work there. And so I wrote an Azure function to do the provisioning work. There was also some workflow there. So I built an Azure, I'm bad with words, not an Azure function, a logic app. So I built a logic app to do some of that other stuff, that more automated kind of stuff, and then push the data back. So yes and no, it's all the above. It's just finding the right thing for the client. But yeah, I mean, we've been doing some Teams development. Just sort of putting in the Teams apps. I think the ACEs aren't quite there yet from a public perception perspective. There needs to be a better story to tell and more demos to show folks. So that's why I think being able to show what that extension point is will help drive more adoption of it.
And that's of course all about storylines and explaining how it and drawing that picture how it could be actually used. And I do completely agree on that. I think in a lot of the messaging what we've been done, the Viva messaging has been, you like your employees, you want to invest on Viva, right? So we are basically forcing the leadership, in quotes, forcing the leadership to be really paying attention on the Viva. Then the ACEs is a bit of a kind of a more complicated story, explain what they actually are and what are you going to achieve about the mobile experience. So it is your personal, not portal, your company portal, but it's your company mobile experience. So
exactly,
and telling that story in the right way with cool demos and samples, that always takes time.
Yeah.
As simple as that. Yeah.
Bam. Done.
That's exactly that, right? There's nothing more to it.
Well, that's really been the direction that we've gone in terms of extension and customization over the years, right? Like we were all on the server side. You want to customize SharePoint? No problem. We can do that. And we're going to write some code and make that happen.
Whatever you want.
Exactly. Whatever you want. I mean, I spent years making SharePoint not look like SharePoint, right?
Yep. You didn't.
And then, exactly. And then we brought it all the way back and we're like, no, you can't customize anything, right? Yeah. Out of the box, just use it. And now we're sort of coming back into the other side of the pendulum swing where it's okay, but here's the box that you can code into.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to from a messaging perspective, it was because customization's good. And then, oh no, customization's bad. And now we're sort of, trying to reframe the conversation and say, let's do them when they're appropriate.
Yeah. Well, nobody's.
So with that, I mean, like you've seen in the past, right? That as you said, we used to change everything about everything. Like basically, SharePoint didn't look like SharePoint at all, right? And at some, especially now, things aren't as flexible. You cannot just put a piece of script on a page. Things change every week, so you don't want to mess up with the DOM because whatever app you build might break tomorrow,
Yes.
So to what degree do you see people kind of escaping to Power Apps, saying like, I cannot do it here, but in Power Apps, it's kind of this low friction place where I can do that. I can build and I own the experience and nobody will change that. Do you see that? Or is it like nah, it's not that simple?
I don't know whether I'm going to have
so you can be open and transparent. We are among friends, so you can be transparent on the feedback. And
and everybody else in the world listening to us. But hey, no pressure.
I mean, I don't know. I'm torn by Power Apps, honestly, because I appreciate the democratization, right? Like you don't need to be able to write code in order to write an app.
Yep.
Is it always the right solution for the job, or is it being used because the person that is doing the work can do a Power App versus being the right tool for the job?
Yep.
I see Power Apps being used, and Flow or Power Automate, whatever. Like I see those tools being used because they are the only tool that are available, and they are not necessarily the right tool. Like an Azure function is probably more reliable than a Power App or a Flow, depending on the scenario, what the load is, how much data is coming in, where does everything need to be stored. So, it really depends on what I'm looking at and what I try to do. Mm-hmm. I built a really great system where I built it all in Power Automate. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Where I think it was the thing I said before, where all these folks in 150 different satellite offices, they needed to push their content into the headquarters. I built it all automatically provisioning flows on the different sites, and it worked great until it didn't. And then I was like, oh, I should have built this as an Azure function. And so I actually ended up tearing it out and building it as an Azure function.
Yeah.
Because what happened was they ended up hitting the limit that they were using a service account to do the work. And they ended up hitting the limit on the number of flows that you could have.
And okay.
I wasn't aware that there's a limit on that, but
there's a limit. There's a limit on the number of flows, the number of runs.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a limit on the number of flows that an individual user can have created under their account. And it's something like 600. So all of a sudden they had sites that weren't being provisioned properly because they hit the number and it wasn't erroring out. It just didn't do it. Yeah. And so I was like, wow. Oh, okay. And so I ended up, stripping it all out and building it as an Azure function. But the point being that what looked like the right tool at the right time really wasn't the right.
Yeah.
Correct.
But that's actually always I think that's experience, right? That's part of the life. We try, we test it out, and then we realize things. Or is there a simpler way than learn from mistakes to know those things?
It's called docs.
But who reads docs?
Well, I guess so. I guess it is twofold, right? It's one, the fact that we need to have docs that do explain all these edges, limitations, and the scenarios, like when is this applicable? And two, being able to find them.
And I guess that's one of the problems that we keep on having as a Microsoft is that all of the documentation is in individual silos, and it's basically focusing always on this feature, this functionality is awesome. This functionality is awesome, you can do X and Y and Z. This functionality is awesome, you can do X and Y and Z, but there's never actually a choice, let's say matrix, where you would go in the top and say, hey, I'm looking to do this thing. What are my options? And that kind of documentation just doesn't exist.
It depends.
Well, of course it depends.
It does depend.
So, that's why we have partners, right? So
that's why we have consultants. Yes, exactly. So,
but it also depends on sort of non-technical factors, right? Like I may build a solution using a Logic app or a Power app because the people that are going to end up inheriting it when I'm done at my client don't know how to write code. So, I may choose that avenue instead of SPFX or instead of an Azure function because of a maintainability.
And that is a very interesting point, right? Because as you mentioned, there are so many facets to choosing the right technology stack, Right, because it's not a single thing, right? Because it's like you have your UI layer, you have the way you communicate with APIs, you have processes, you have the automated part to it, you have where you store the data, and it all depends on 20 million things like your governance, compliance, security, skill set, who's going to maintain it, how does it need to run, manage versus unmanage, the license you have, and whatnot. And you need to factor all of that in eventually, and then comes one, you need this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And how to be a objective consultant with all of those choices rather than just always be, because I know this, and of course everything looks like a needle because I know the hammer.
Everything
exactly.
becomes a nail, right?
So, and I guess that's really the hard part for if you think about customers, how can they find the right consultants who would have the experience through the spectrum so that they can actually choose the right set of tooling?
Yeah.
And do we have any certification or verification program for that? No, we don't. So
at that scale, no, not really.
Yeah.
But that would be, well, that would almost sound like the MCM program we used to have way back when.
True.
But now changing weekly.
Yeah, that gets a bit complicated.
Factor in the latest SDKs and patterns and the ways to do things today. Yeah, it is interesting, definitely.
Yeah, and we're always learning too. So, there might be a new, connector out there for Power Apps or for the Power Platform that I didn't know about, and so I'm constantly learning too. I don't know. I think that's a really hard skill. I mean, personally for me, I always tell clients, you don't need to work with me, but find somebody you trust. If it's not me, find somebody that you trust and you like vibe with them, and you think they're giving you the best advice. Because a bad consulting relationship is always bad. Like, if you don't trust folks, if you don't trust the folks building your solutions, or they're not being scrupulous or whatever, like that's just not cool, and it's not going to end well.
True.
So.
Sure.
Well, and at the end of the day, right? I mean, you always expect an objective advice. The problem is you don't know what you do not know, and nobody knows everything, right? So I guess being clear on it, what do I know as a person? What are my blind spots? And how do I communicate it to the customer so they can say, hey, if you come to me around compliance, I cannot advise you on that. I just don't know enough. And I think that is really hard, like to know what you do not know.
Yeah. And that's one of the cool things that I appreciate about working with Sympraxis is that we all sort of have our little silos of what we're really good at. And if you don't know what you don't know in Power Platform or in PowerShell or automation, like there are places I can go to get that information, and I can talk with Julie or Mark or Emily about a solution that I'm building, and they may go, are you sure you want to do it that way?
Was it intentional that you didn't mention Todd? Just kidding.
No, I love Todd. But that's
anyone
part,
else?
That's part of the. Did I get everybody? And Mike, yeah, Mike, Emily, Julie, Todd, Mark, yeah. But yeah, I mean that's part of the model, right? So like, I don't need to know everything about administration and automation because I know somebody that knows that really well. Yeah. And if that's a component to my project or should be, I know where I can go to get it.
Yeah.
So
and that's of course the beauty of a well-functioned small company is like Sympraxis. So I guess Sympraxis objectives isn't even growing to be a multi-thousand people company.
It's not the model. It's not what we're looking for. And it's just it's all about finding those that, for lack of a better word, like the dream team, like those people that you've worked with in your career that you would want to work with again because they're really, really good, both on a personal level and a professional level. Like that's the model. And it's not one of like explosive growth. It's about, and this is actually how I showed up, right? Like I was at a company and I was not happy. And I asked Julie one day, I was like, okay, listen, just if any of your clients have any, or you hear of anybody that's looking for anybody, let me know. And the next week she emails me and she's like, come have lunch with me.
We have an offer which you cannot refuse.
The rest is
Exactly.
history.
And I was like, oh wow, like, okay, cool, sure.
Yeah.
So
makes perfect sense. Now, from a timing perspective, we're trying to get this squeezed in under an hour because we have the articles to go through as well. I wanted to put you on a spot still. So this is always fun without any warning. As a experienced consulting driven person, what would be your 3 to 5 tips for a younger generation who want to do stuff what you do? So moving in to be a high-end consultant.
Moving to Iceland.
Oh, it starts from there. Yes, of course.
I don't know. Like you said, like doing stuff you do, right? So it's a part of that.
So I guess one of the things is don't be afraid to make it happen, right? I had somebody tell me, don't get caught up in the no's, right? Like there's always, you'll find somebody that will give you more money. You will find somebody that will give you more vacation time. You will don't listen to the no's, just figure out what you want in your life and go for it. And, don't let anything stop you from doing that. I mean, I think from a consulting perspective, I think the soft skills are way more important than the technical skills. I can teach somebody how to write React. I can teach them how to do SharePoint work. I can't teach you how to be nice to clients when they're yelling at you. So I can, it's just hard. So really, really understanding the softer skills. From a technical perspective, I will say I am really a back to basics kind of person. Understand HTML, understand CSS, and understand JavaScript. Because if you can understand those 3 things in this space, you'll be able to figure out everything else.
Right.
I think those are really, hacking divs together is like some of the code I've seen is just really bad. So, being able to understand what you're doing and when you copy and paste, understanding what it does, those are also really important skills to have. Like, don't just do it. Take the time to learn it and figure it out. I don't know.
I love the don't concentrate on no's and just keep on trying to figure out where you're going to go and then gradually heading to that direction. That is actually really good advice. So I had a related on this one, actually. I had a good friend popped in for a coffee yesterday with her with her husband. And we had a long talk because she's moving potentially to a different career from the current career, being a chemist and all of that, and looking into moving to coding and development because you can do that remotely. It has more freedom, flexibility.
Hey, Vesa, do you have any tips?
Yes, exactly. Well, that was the discussion. So, but it's actually quite interesting to try to figure out the right things. People always have that. Okay, I need to study a lot. I need to read all of these books. And the answer is no, not really. Actually, that's not that you learn by doing, and that's the right way of approaching that. So not. We actually have a book which says Coding JavaScript for Dummies, and that's what she came to pick up. And then I was reading that before, and it's like, no, you don't want to actually read this because you do not learn writing code by reading a book. It just doesn't happen.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I learned that way to code.
But you probably did some coding as well. So again, you don't start by reading a book.
It's not like you can read about riding a bike. Like and eventually you need to get on a bike. It's the same here. Like
exactly.
But on the other hand, just to code without any background is like you can copy paste some code and it works. True. But do you really learn? So it's like it is kind of things that you have to do in parallel, right? Like you need to do it. You need to pay your dues in a way and spend the time typing. But it's also good at some point to understand, okay, what am I actually typing? What does that thing do?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I would say I learned more. I mean, yes, I had the whole stack of SharePoint books, right? Like, and I looked at them all the time. My copy of Andrew Connell's MCMS book, right? Oh, yeah. Had sticky tabs everywhere. I got rid of them all when we moved, but
you mean the tabs or the books?
The books, all the books went to the Goodwill shop, the secondhand shop. I mean, I read the books, but I learned more by working on projects with a new technology and doing it. And I think the other thing I would say to somebody that was just starting out, find a mentor that you trust, who can review your code and can help give you objective advice, because I have learned so much from the people that I've worked with over the years that it's really valuable just to like put that ego aside and go, so-and-so, can you just look at this for me? Tell me, is this the right solution?
Yep. And then they will provide feedback, and then learning not to take that feedback in a "don't criticize me" way, right? So learning to take it in a "wow, this is actually cool," and let's. So
I mean, I learned to be a better programmer because of that.
Exactly.
And that's, you learn by failing. And, whether it's today or whether it was 6 months ago or 6 years ago or 20 years ago, like I remember the places where I failed and where I've changed what I do now differently because of it. So.
Yeah. And I guess with that, like, there's always a better way to write code. There's always a clearer way. There's always an easier way, a more efficient way. And I think it is illusion to be able to say I made it. There is nothing to improve. There's always something to improve, right? And I guess it's the mindset, the being open to feedback and curious about like what else can you do. I think that is eventually what allows you to learn.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Cool. I think that's a great final statement to the discussion. We can go on and on and on. But thank you, Derek, joining us on the chat discussion. Call is not a term I can use. See, Waldek, I'm learning. So I'm taking your feedback and adjusting that.
Yes.
But thank you for joining us.
The nuances, the power of nuances.
Yes. And congratulations one more time on the Office Developer MVP status. You should really open up the boxes and have a look on what's inside and put them on the back and all of that stuff. So if you have the room for doing that, like Waldek has, so because the MVP status is on the back. So is it?
Yeah,
yes, it is.
I don't even know where they're going to send my stuff. I have to go look and see where they're going to send it.
Well, I guess at some point they will ask you address to ship it, I guess.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. Everything here is, I don't know.
But cool. Thank you, Derek, for joining. Really good discussion. And for those who are listening or watching, we're going to jump then on the articles, and we'll go through them and the last articles within a week together with Waldek. But thank you, Derek, on this one. Really, really good.
Thank you,
folks. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cool. Thank you, Derek, one more time on joining us on the good discussion. So good to catch up, and congratulations one more time. I think that's like 5th time saying that on your newly received MVP award. It's now 5 days from that moment. I think this 1st of December was the day when he got that email. So because every single 1st of the month we'll send the updates for the new candidates who are getting awarded. Those, by the way, who are wondering how do you get an MVP status, how do you get to be an MVP? Waldek.
It's very broad, right? So basically TLDR is share your technical knowledge with community, and that can be whether you're speaking at events, publishing books, writing blog posts, recording videos, building code samples, presenting on community calls. Anything's applicable, anything counts. The bottom line is, how do you help others in technology?
Yes. Helping out those and sharing your knowledge is for sure the key, as you were saying. And then somebody needs to nominate you as a Microsoft employee or an existing MVP, and then you will submit the list of things what you have done, and then that's going to be graded up and thumbs up and thumbs down. And if it's thumbs up, you will get the MVP award. And then you get the access on NDA stuff and all of that stuff. So there's some benefits out of it as well, which you lost or everything as you moved into Microsoft, right, Waldek? I was never an MVP, so.
Well, yes and no, right? So it's kind of, I don't think I am a good example of that.
What do I mean?
Right. Well, because when I moved, it's like my role means we're working closely with you and other product groups, and that gives us
access on things anyway. So that's
yeah,
true.
yeah, exactly. So we stay more informed because it's our job to know what's coming, what's coming with where, and to work and to create these rollouts and plans, communicate around it. So it isn't really comparable, but it's, I think, like, for one, being an MVP, because you mentioned NDA stuff, right? And to clarify that, what is NDA stuff? It means getting earlier access to announcements, to things that are coming, like getting the additional insights about why things are the way they are, what's coming, what product groups have in mind, and where you can help as an MVP. Being external employee, having direct access to customers, to the field, as it's called, and bring that external expertise, perspective, and share it with us at Microsoft to help us build products for you and customers, right? So I guess, like, that is really all-encompassing thing as NDA stuff.
Sure. Good clarification. Now, let's actually jump on this week's articles, and then we're closing after that. So we do have, there was actually a relatively busy week from the Microsoft. So let me actually share my screen. And in here, so first of all, it was the last days of the month. So then there's the monthly summaries from some of the products. So for example, Teams had a what's new in Microsoft Teams. There is a video format on this one as well, but there was a lot of cool stuff available here. This one is something which we both kind of reacted when we were studying this, because it's quite wow. So you're actually sharing images from the camera directly in the call. So and this basically means that if you have a whiteboard or something in the meeting room where you have people sitting, and so then you can share that as as something to share in the call. That's actually really, really cool.
Yeah, so you can, so in other words, for those who don't see the video we're looking at, imagine that you have a physical whiteboard in your room and you're presenting through a camera, and the whiteboard is like kind of a bit to the side. You can clip that part of your video stream and share it as a flat image, basically the same way you would take Office Lens to do a scan of a paper, and that will then make it straight, make it look symmetrical, like all of that, and that in real time on screen through from a physical whiteboard or a map or any diagram you might have in your room directly on a Teams call. Like, that is like, we're doing what?
Wow.
Like, that was really cool to see.
Exactly. That is really, really cool. And there's a lot of, like, this is a good example of a lot of this kind of advanced, let's say, features which are coming in on Teams as well, making it also easier to democratize the remote work and the hybrid work. So really making sure that it doesn't feel that much different if you're joining remotely on the calls rather than being in place in the meeting, because in certain countries people are already in the meetings. In certain countries that's unfortunate and it's not the situation, but I guess we're heading more and more, and we will see more and more of these kind of features in Teams in the future as well. So other than that, a lot of new announcements, some devices stuff, cool looking things, cool looking gear for sure, and not necessarily for an individual home. This one is really cool as well. So the Microsoft Loop components are in Teams chat. So not, I think they were in the channel chat, but no, they were in a personal chat, but they were not in a Teams chat in the past. I think that's the step forward. But now you can actually see the live, you can collaborate directly in the Teams and see those changes in real time, which is really, really cool. The Microsoft Loop is basically the same as the Floyd framework was in the past, but now it has been rebranded as Microsoft Loop components. And other than that, a lot of improvements on the search results, as an example, getting improvements and all of that, and a lot of other really, really cool features. So presenter mode is getting better and better. I think we have Peter's blog post related on that one as well, and a lot of new stuff like we release every single month. Now, on SharePoint side of the house, there was first of all, there's a really good the Intro Zone podcast entry with Andrei Esipov. He's a principal program manager actually in my platform team, and he's been focusing on the performance improvements in the SharePoint and also in the Microsoft lists. Well, it's SharePoint behind the scenes anyway, but still. So, but it really cool stuff as well. And sooner or later we get all of that stuff to be also potentially available for developers, or we can enhance those things and all of that. So Andrea is doing a great job in there. Other than that, a lot of great announcements here as well. Microsoft Viva, there's I think this has been public for a while already, but io.io is joining to be the fifth Viva module, and of course more is to be happening in the future as well. So the Microsoft Viva is a set of tooling and products and then those can be individually acquired. So and a lot of great improvements on the creation, page editing, because that is really the bread and butter of SharePoint nowadays, and SharePoint Framework 1.13 came out last month as well, and a lot of other improvements as well. So really cool stuff. Maybe one thing to call out is the Microsoft feedback quote still in preview, but basically the replacement for the user voice is now available for Microsoft Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive and all of that. So you can continue voting on those features which are the most requested ones. So super important indication for us in Microsoft that you actually need that feature. So. Cool. Then we had a blog post from Matt Wolodarski, and this is the series where he talks about the journey on the Viva topics. So what you should be considering taking the Viva topics into use. And this is the third blog post on that. So it's now we're on the implement phase. So basically considerations and steps and processes. How do we take this into a use and we got topics into a use. So really good stuff as well. So thank you, Matt, on that. Now, Rabia and Bob had a new video related on single sign-on on Teams tabs. Do you want to do a quick intro on what are we talking here? We're
talking about implementing the single sign-on experience in Teams tabs or in apps exposed as Teams tabs in Teams, right? Yeah. So the idea is that you have an app that isn't available anonymously, right? You need to authenticate to that app. But if you expose that, or when you expose that app in Teams, you're already authenticated in Teams. So how can we simplify or improve the experience by not requiring the users to sign in twice, one to Teams and then another one to Teams apps, and then from there, they're also allowing that app to call other APIs like Graph to retrieve and show the data in the context of an app. So all of that, Rabia and Bob explain. How do you do that? What are the different things you have to take into account when building your app, and what is the right way to go about it?
Yep, really good, and a great video, and it has been also split into multiple sections, which is really cool. So you can really easily jump on what's relevant for you. So really good stuff in there. Now, this one is from Tomomi, developing enterprise-ready Microsoft Teams apps with the Teams Toolkit v3, which is also still in preview. But basically, we had Teams Toolkit v2, which was in developer preview. Now we have Teams Toolkit v3, which is an adaptation or a newer version of that. But because there was a breaking changes, the version number was updated as well, but it's still in preview. But now it focuses more on the enterprise development areas, so multiple environments and easily environmental variables and CI, CD, and all of that stuff. So good blog post on summarizing what's available and what are the main changes over there. Good. And then we had a blog post in the Microsoft 365 community blog from Ananda Vadivelan. That is a really hard name to pronounce. I do apologize for that. But he has been actually doing this also live in the community call. So how do you build this kind of a really cool video streaming video catalog using JSON definitions and then SharePoint spaces? So creating a cool experiences and how do we configure those and how do we make things look nicer and nicer using the JSON definitions? So no code. Right, so just JSON.
How many lines is it? Wow, it's 400. That is almost 500 lines of code you cannot debug.
Yeah, well, that's JSON. It's not code, right? So
yeah, it's prose.
Yes. Now, this one is from Yuri's Pullmans. So here we go. So Dataverse Search, the good, bad, and ugly. So basically how it works and what works in the best way and what doesn't work as you're doing things. So I'm not a Dataverse specialist personally. Have you tried on using this?
Not yet, no. So that is yet on my plate to try. But I guess this is a very good post explaining the different gotchas that you need to take into account, or different things you should keep in mind when you implement a solution that uses it.
Yep, absolutely. Good. And then Peter Venstra had a blog post related on the presentation mode in the Microsoft Teams, and that's the one way we can actually split the camera and do the presentation on the side, or then you can overlay yourself on top of the presentation as well. So no OBS or any other video tricks needed anymore. So you can do that directly in Teams, which is really, really cool. So making it easier for everybody to take advantage.
Yeah.
Now, Eli had a really nice blog post related on how to update field values in SharePoint using the Microsoft Graph. So basically walking through the different scenarios and what I need to consider and how do I update those field values using then Microsoft Graph APIs or API SDK. And considerations like how the field names
internal field
might
names
look like. Yes.
Yeah,
but really, really good podcast and showing again, explaining the basics, which is really, really important. Then people can start building on top of those learnings. Now, this one's really cool from Marcus Miller as from Avanade. Yes, Avanade is testing an Azure function using delegated access with Postman. And how can I do testing? I build an Azure function. How can I test that with the Postman? So I can do different kind of value testing as I'm calling things. How do I get the access token? How do I bypass that to the Azure function so that it can use the access token as well? Yep. So really, really cool stuff as well. Thank you, Marcus. And by the way, congratulations on getting your MVP.
Exactly. I was just about to say that.
Yes. And then 3 more, extract all data table rows from in a form using SharePoint Syntax. So SharePoint Syntax is basically our machine learning automation for document management. It is getting more and more investments all the time internally. And I don't think people are super familiar with it, but basic idea is that it can actually do detections like following. So it can actually get information from the documents and then used or present that in a more understandable format. So extracting the data and then indexing that, for example, and then make it more easily available. And all of the dynamic metadata and all of that is based on Syntax as well. So really, really cool stuff for sure. Yeah. Thank you, Leon, on that. Paulo had a new video related on extending Microsoft Viva Connection desktop with SPFX. So different options on that one. Nice two really, really quick video as well. So 2 minutes and 28 seconds. 2 minutes and what are the other? There hours, seconds.
2 minutes 28 seconds.
Yeah, I know. No, it's Monday.
What was the question? What was the question?
I don't know. Who are you? Where are you? Why are we here? And then, Giuliano De Luca had a yes. What? Somebody's recording. Giuliano De Luca had a video related on how to create a video library view with list formatting in SharePoint. And this is actually really, really cool stuff as well. So stepping through the steps of creating something which looks somewhat following. So actually really, really cool stuff. So again, using the list formatting capabilities for changing how we are rendering the list forms and list information. So really, really powerful stuff as well. But that's it for the articles this week. So what's going to happen what's on your agenda this week?
Very much until the end of the year. So it's twofold, right? So on the work front, I'm going through a few ideas internally at work that are, at the end of the day, geared towards improving developer experience on building M365 apps. And basically, we're in a stage where I'm thinking about what are different things that we could do, trying to write up the ideas, get them out of my head on paper, get feedback from others, and basically at the end of the day, choose which ones we want to take, because there are only so many hours in a day, and you cannot do it all.
The
right?
challenge,
So
yes.
That is one. And another one is on the front of CLI for Microsoft 365. We are keeping adding updates. We are exploring new ideas, new commands, new improvements. And one of the things we're working specifically on are commands for M365 apps. So imagine you're building an app, whether that's a single page app or React web app or ASP.NET web app, and you want to bring that to M365. What does that mean? What are the different things you need, and how can we help you in the process? What are different commands or features that we could add to make it easier for you to bring that app in, to manage it, life cycle, and so forth and so on. So we're thinking about that, and you should be seeing more features around that area coming soon.
There's a constant flow of commands in the CLI, which is really, really cool. How many commands there is, by the way? You know?
I think we have over 400 now.
It's actually pretty cool. So,
and it still feels like we don't have so much.
Surface.
Yeah, exactly. There is so much we don't have. Like we have a lot, but there's also so much more we don't have, and it's actually twofold, right? Because on one hand, we have like really projection of the API to command. So like get all sites, get a site, delete a site, create a site. So very much the CRUD operations. Yep. But then there are scenarios like upgrade SPFX project, which is a scenario, which is a set of steps we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And along these lines, it's never ending because every single day there are new scenarios, new use cases that we could add to simplify the different steps and not require people to really think about the work they have to do in a robotic way. Like I need to do this step, then I need to take the input and put it into this step. Not like we understand what you need to do, tell us what you need to do, and we will do all the different steps that are required for you because we know them.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Now on my agenda, last week was a bit busy because we had the European Collaboration Summit, which was actually really cool.
How was that?
So we had 1,300 registered attendees, plus the organizers, speakers, and then sponsors. So it is a lot of people. But then at the same time, as the I can't remember how the Omni thing. Omicron, the kind of a news media went crazy on it on Friday, and then the conference started with the pre-day on Monday. That meant that during the weekend, where people were still like, what is this? And trying to figure out, is it safe to move or not? A lot of people unfortunately canceled. So I think there was 2,500 registered people on the conference, 1,300 came, and it was actually really, really cool. So everybody, everybody's validated for having the vaccinations and scanning and all of that stuff in EU. There's a simple, basically application, and you get the official certificates, and then you can do that with the mobile, which is actually really cool. And everybody was wearing masks and all of that stuff. So it went really well. So really, really cool. Obviously, a lot to prepare and do and talk and all of that stuff. So that took up most of last week. But now it's time to catch up and then pushing out SharePoint Framework 1.14 beta is coming this week. So it might be
cool.
And there's a lot of actually stuff in that.
Yeah, exactly. Any top highlights what's coming?
So for me, at least, the big thing which I guess I created the design for them as even because I do some feature PM stuff every now and then is the new templates. So basically, as you create your new default web part, it is already adapting the Microsoft Teams or SharePoint theming backgrounds and all of that stuff. So there's much more intelligence on the output projects because we haven't actually updated the default project for like 6 years, and it starts looking pretty ugly. So it's about time to pump up the.
I mean, you can have an opinion how it looks like, but at the end of the day, it's really good to hear that you're looking into helping developers build things that work great in the what we have now as opposed to what we used to have when SPFX was initially shipped, right? So a lot has changed since then.
Automatically detecting the Microsoft Teams theming and all of that stuff and changing the rendering and all of that is being outputted on the web part automatically by default. You can the intention is that you can actually bypass this complexity as well because we got actually kind of a mixed feedback around this investment, which says no, I already know SPFX. I just want to have a starting point which is as minimal as possible. But then if you don't know SPFX and you don't know what is a section background, or if you don't know what is a theming, how the theming should be applied, it would be good to have a bit more polished example. So we're trying to address both of the objectives with this change. So.
Will you also include the guidance for folks who used to write all of that code by themselves to move to the things available in SPFX so that they can remove that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a documentation side of the house, and we need to write some new documentation. Additional docs. Exactly. Now that you say it. So anyway, but that's happening this week. Because anyway, the week after most of the people in Redmond are going to go for a holiday break. So, and that means that there's more time to actually make stuff happen.
Well, some people in Europe will also go eventually for a holiday break, which is well deserved. So yes, some people, I said, not everybody.
Yes.
Just to give enough room for you to stay and be able to work.
Exactly.
Which is some.
That sounds bad. No, just kidding. Anyway, so I will have days off here and there as well. So it's okay. It's okay. So, but especially like we talked to actually with Derek's interview as well, because of the Finland, for example, being in the north, it means that during wintertime there isn't that much light. The sun is now set. It is 3:45, which is actually on the afternoon, and it's already dark outside. So
wow.
And that means that you rather want to prioritize the vacation time in summer when there's a lot of light, and then on winter time, well, it's dark anyway outside. So why would you take time off? So
you have streaming services. Maybe you want to read a book.
That is true.
Play
that's
games.
Fair.
I don't know.
That is fair. That's fair.
Each to their own.
I think. Plus the weather is right now pretty rough, but that's a separate discussion. I think we were hitting minus 26 in the wind factor yesterday, and that's pretty tough.
In Celsius.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is -7 in Fahrenheit, so it's still a lot. Anyway, so I think we'll have one more PnP Weekly before we go to a holiday break as well. So it's just a bit of a warning for those who are watching and following. So we'll have one more week from the moment when this is getting released, and then we'll have a few weeks off because everybody is taking some time off. I guess most of the people are taking some time off.
We'll see you in a year, right? And then we're going to see you in a year.
Yes. Yes. Anyway, thanks to everybody for watching and listening. We'll be back with the PnP Weekly within a week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.